Exercise 3A, future value from the HSC topic investments and loans. So the learning intention for this lesson is to calculate future and present values, to find compound interest earned or owed, and use this to solve related problems. So you've worked with future value previously in year 9 and 10. Future value is basically compound interest, okay? But in the standard course, we refer to it as future value, FV, and it's that abbreviation is also used on your formula sheet. So you need to get used to that terminology and familiarize yourself with it, as in worded problems they will talk about the future value, and then you need to make that connection with compound interest. However, the calculation is exactly the same. Now, the difference between compound interest and simple interest, so you learn about both, and we will learn about both in the standard course, and you've learned about both previously, as I mentioned. The difference is, if I am calculating simple interest, so for example, if I were to borrow money and pay it back with simple interest, I would borrow the money, let's say I borrowed $1,000, I might pay $100 interest per year, or sorry, as a percentage. So I might pay 10% interest per year on the $100. Now with simple interest, that interest is calculated on what you initially borrowed. So each year I would only be earning an extra. Well, I don't only have to pay $100 because that's 10% of 1,000. Now with compound interest, it's a little bit different. So it can't either be better or worse depending if you're investing or if you're borrowing money. So with compound interest, if I borrowed $1,000, the interest for the first term, which might be per year, so for the first year, will be based on $1,000. At the end of the $1,000, that will recalculate, adding the interest, so it might be 1,100, and then at the end of the second year, it's 10% of that 1,100. So it grows up quickly. So as I said, it can either be a good thing or a bad thing. So if you're borrowing money, it's better to borrow at simple interest. However, I would be interested to see who would lend you money using that calculation. Most banks work with compound interest, and you'll quickly work out why. But if you're investing money, so into like a term deposit account, obviously you would want your interest that you're earning, so that's your income off that money you're investing, to be compounded so that you will earn more money. Okay, so if you're borrowing money and it's on compound interest, you're going to pay more in interest. But if you're investing money, you're also going to earn more in interest. So it both has the benefits and disadvantages for either, just depending on what you're using it for. Now, that's shown to you here in this table. So there's a little bit of information. So the first one is showing simple interest, how first year $1,000, $50 interest is earned, the total goes up to $1,050, and then it's the same amount of money, same interest rate, I can tell because of what's happened in the first year. But see how with this first one, 1,150 is what is earned by the end of 3 years, and 1,157 for the compound. So it doesn't seem like a big amount of money. However, we're only talking about $1,000 here. So imagine if you were looking at borrowing money for a house, which is close to $1 million, well, then you definitely would see a big difference in the money that you're spending on interest. Okay. So when we're calculating compound interest, we are finding the future value. Okay. That's not a very good colour. So you're finding future value, and the principal, so what you invest at the beginning or what you borrow at the beginning, is known as the present value. And they're the two abbreviations that are used in the formula. So present value could be what you borrow or what you invest. So obviously it's better to invest, but it's not always possible. Okay, so the future value formula is exactly the same as a compound interest formula that you've worked with before. All right, so now if you are finding, all right, so they show it here in your textbook, they show it as 3 formulas. This here is, in my opinion, the only formula that you need to learn, okay? And it is on your formula sheet in the exact same format. So I would prefer if you got familiar with using that one. Now, if you have a look at this second one, so the first one is to find future value. Okay, so present value times 1 plus the rate to the power of the number of turns. And we'll talk about the parts of that formula in a moment. Now, if I want to find present value, I will divide future value by 1 plus r to the power of n. Now, I don't think you need to memorize this or learn it because all you're doing over here is to find present value, you would rearrange this formula. And you know how to do that because you learned how to do that in year 11. Okay, now this formula down here, this is a compound interest formula that you learnt previously. Okay, so it's exactly the same except that instead of FV and PV, we use A and P. Alright, now before we move on, having a look at that formula, what it means. So future value is what your loan will be at the end of the term or what your investment will be worth. Present value is what money you borrow or you invest. Rate is the interest rate. Now, per compounding time period, that's really important. Okay. So if they say, for example, that the interest rate is 12% per annum, but you are compounding monthly, you would have to divide that interest rate by 12 to find the monthly interest rate. Okay, and it says expressed as a decimal or a fraction. We generally just do it as a decimal, and whatever the percentage is, you divide it by 100. But you'll see that in a second when we have a look at some examples. And then n is the number of terms. So if they say 2 years, but it's compounded monthly, well, the number of terms is not 2. The number of terms is 24. Okay? Now, we can calculate the amount of interest earned. So when you calculate future value, so for example, if I'm investing some money and I'm going to earn some interest, now what the formula will give me is what my investment is worth at the end. So it includes the principal. So if obviously I want to find out how much interest I made, okay, I will just subtract that principal amount or the present value amount. Okay, and that's what this formula here is showing you. But you don't really need to memorize that. It becomes kind of common sense once you get more familiar with the formulas. Now, let's have a look at this first example. Now, it says Blake invests $7,000 over 5 years at a compound interest rate of 4.5% per annum. Calculate the future value after 5 years. Answer correct to the nearest set. So he's investing $7,000, 5 years, 4.5% per annum. Now, they haven't said how it's compounded, so we assume that it's annually. Okay? Now, for every question, write down your formula. That way you get more familiar with it. Future value equals present value, and this is on your formula sheet, so you don't actually have to memorize it, just have to recognize it. Now, we are calculate the future value, okay? Now, the present value is 7,000. 1 plus, now my rate is 4.5%. To make that a decimal, divide it by 100. Okay, so it becomes 0.045, and the number of terms here is 5. Now, it's a bit messy. Now that can go straight into the calculator, okay, and it's worth $8,723.27 after 5 years. So they just want the future value, so they're happy with that. They don't want interest only. But if I wanted to know how much interest I had earned, I would then just subtract $7,000. All right, B. It says calculate the present value of an investment that has a future value of $500,000 over 8 years with an interest rate of 8.5% per annum. Now, as I said, you can, in this case, use that second formula, but I always use just the first one. So future value equals present value 1 plus r to the power of n. Actually, if I could just quickly find it, show you the formula sheet. Now the formula sheet, it's here. The future value compound interest formula is right there at the top right hand side. Okay. Alright, so let's have a look. So in this case, we know that the future value is 500,000. The present value we don't know, that's what we're finding. The rate is 8.5% and it's compounded monthly. Okay, so 0.085. Now, because it's compounded monthly, I'm going to divide that by 12. And the number of terms is 8 years, but monthly. So it's 8 times 12, which is 96. Okay, so Now I want to find this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by everything that's left. And notice I don't bother putting anything in the calculator until the end, because it just reduces the rounding. It's not necessary. So to find the present value, I'm going to put all of this into a calculator. So just to point out again, because it's compounded monthly, this is 12. Now, so this is 8 years, right? So you're going to get 8 times 12. So basically, whatever you divide your interest rate by, you're multiplying that by, okay? Because it's the number of terms. All right, now, if we throw that into a calculator, the present value, I'll just change colours, is $253.916. Sorry, $253,916.41. Okay, so that's what was invested to earn the $500,000, which makes sense. So the present value is obviously going to be less than what the future value is. Okay, now that's example 1. Let's have a look at example 2. Example 2 says Tyson invests $10,000 over 10 years at a compound interest rate of 7.5% per annum. Calculate the amount of the investment after 10 years, correct to the nearest cent. Okay, so again, future value equals present value 1 plus r to the power of n. So we're finding future value. We're investing $10,000. 1 plus my rate is, so 7.5 is 7.5%. So 0.075. Now they don't say anything about how many terms, so we just take it annually to the power of 10. Okay, so if you put that into a calculator, you'll get $610. So you should always write your unrounded number and then round it to 2 decimal places because it's money. Now, they won't tell you to round to 2 decimal places. It's just assume that you know that because that's how our currency works. Okay, so that's part A. Part B says the interest earned after 10 years. So they want to know what the interest only would be. So remember, to find the interest, we go the amount, which is what we just found, the future value, minus the principal. So to find out how much is interest only is $20,610.32 minus the $10,000 we invested, and it leaves us with $10,610.32, and that's in interest. Okay. And that's it for this lesson. Okay, so having a look at the textbook now, some of those HSC questions and the additional questions.